Good day to everyone and welcome. I am Gargi, your moderator for this webinar. It's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speakers and shed light on today's topic, which is From Legacy to Leading Edge, Unveiling the Potential of Application Modernization. Throughout this session, we'll delve into the transformative journey of application modernization, featuring insightful discussions between Frank Della Rosa, who is the Research Vice President of SaaS, Business Platforms and Industry Cloud at IDC. His core research analyzes current market conditions and trends and provides strategic guidance to technology suppliers and mid-market and enterprise technology buyers. The ongoing research highlights various SaaS and cloud computing aspects, including hybrid and multi-cloud application deployments, business platforms, cloud marketplaces, buyer behavior, and global trends across vertical and functional markets. Then we have Srikara Rao from Xoriant, who is the Senior Vice President of Cloud and Infrastructure. He comes with 2 decades of solid experience in driving transformational change and achieving remarkable outcomes throughout innovative solutions and streamlining operations. At Xoriant, Srikara is responsible for developing and implementing innovative strategies to optimize cloud infrastructure, strengthen digital networks, ensure robust IT security measures, and streamline service management processes. Then we have Amit Beria from Xoriant, who is the Delivery Director with over 22 years of IT experience. He has developed and implemented various solutions for large software, high-tech, telecom, storage, and banking organizations, and has a special interest in the analysis, design, development, and integration of products. So before we kick off the session, let's go over some quick tips to ensure a seamless webinar experience. Should you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. We'll address them during the Q&A at the session's conclusion. Furthermore, please be advised that this session will be recorded for future reference. Kindly mute your microphones and set your phones to silent mode. So now, without any further delay, I invite Frank to begin the session. Over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Gargi. It's a pleasure to be able to join the team here today. So let me start off by first saying application modernization will be talked about in a much broader context. This is going to engage both technology and business stakeholders in a joint effort to move business performance forward. And this really is a time where digital businesses are continuing to raise the bar for performance. This is happening in every industry. These companies are cloud first, they're digitally determined, which means they are always pursuing opportunities to leverage digital technologies in the pursuit of better performance. They're unencumbered by monolithic legacy applications. And we'll talk more about this. This doesn't mean there aren't still places for legacy apps. It just means that those businesses that are seeking modernization will have to leverage new technology, new deployment methodologies that are going to require a more modern architecture. But these are companies that modernize with purpose. They link application modernization efforts to the needs of the business. And the most common drivers that we see include enhancing the user experience. That probably is top of list, along with enhancing customer experience. The two are linked. Improving agility and scalability. We know needs change, they're changing more rapidly, market conditions are volatile, disruption comes from virtually everywhere. Businesses need to understand how to operate continuously in this type of environment. That requires having different systems and applications in place. Refactoring these applications for deployment across public, private, hybrid, and multi-cloud architectures. Incorporating these new digital technologies, and we'll talk more about some of the innovation accelerators like AI and advanced AI and the impact this has on performance. Reducing maintenance and support costs, offloading this to key strategic partners from cloud service providers to systems integrators, managed service providers, and companies that are very deep, have a very deep bench in technology. And then, of course, most importantly, enhancing security and streamlining business processes. Application modernization is the critical step toward business transformation. Gargi, if we could go to the next slide. The process is complex. There are many different options and motions, from lift and shift, which has been the most common to this point, to gradual replacement and rip and replace. The initial process can take weeks, even months. And the process, of course, has risks. For this reason, many businesses continue to rely on legacy applications. Expectations for performance improvements resulting from the move to cloud are high. We can see from the data that businesses have a range of outcomes they're looking to achieve as a result of the move to cloud. This is from productivity enhancements to security improvements, faster access to cloud-based technologies like AI and machine learning, and now, of course, generative AI. The key story here is that businesses have very high expectations for this change in infrastructure, change in deployments that really can only be achieved in part through modernization and the right approach to modernization. Now, innovation accelerators like AI and machine learning have continued to be a primary driver for modernization. And now we have generated AI. While we're in the early days, the rate of AI adoption has accelerated, and this is in no small part to ChatGPT, which was the tipping point. For the first time, we are seeing broad enterprise adoption and investment in AI, and we're at a point now where businesses are trying to understand what are the prominent use cases where they can leverage generative AI while still mitigating some of the risks that are in place. IDC research shows that 32% of businesses are significantly investing in generative AI technologies this year, and 45% are engaged in initial exploration of possible use cases. The major factors when evaluating generative AI partners include trustworthiness of the partner's own IP and data, protection of the client's IP and data, and the accuracy of generated predictions and recommendations. So we're still seeing a lot of exploration and a lot of reaching out to understand what are the implications for doing this. To go back to modernization, the decision to modernize and which approach is needed really depends on the outcomes the business is trying to achieve. Gargi, if we could go to the next slide. But there are numerous opportunities for a business that aligns its modernization efforts with the outcomes that will lead to sustained competitive advantage. Our research shows that businesses pursue modernization to identify new revenue streams, to be able to fully leverage the impact of cloud, and of course, to be able to take better advantage of this exponential growth in data, which is expected to grow by a factor of 10. Much of this data will be generated and processed at the edge. The trend is for computing to be pushed closer or as close as possible to the needs and the opportunities of the business. And this is something that we're seeing continuously throughout our research. Gargi, next slide, please. I'd like to turn it over to Srikara and ask Srikara, what are you seeing relative to the trends that we see in our data?
Yeah, no, Frank, thank you. I think there is a lot happening, and with Xoriant being at the leading edge of product engineering services, leading edge of digital transformation and adoption of the cloud, I think Xoriant has a headway in many of these subjects that we are speaking about. So we want to demonstrate some of the use cases or the examples of how we have done it, where we have done it. And there is no better person from our delivery director, Amit, who could speak about this. So Amit, why don't you just go over this and give a brief of what we have done for our clients, understanding Xoriant is ahead of the curve compared to the rest of the competition here.
Yeah, thanks, Srikara. Sure, I'll be more than happy to run through a few of the use cases that we have here. We'll talk about the new revenue streams, right? So one of the use cases that we have here, a client has an application which supports licensed databases, due to which the number of customers they could onboard was very less because of the cost of the licenses and the infrastructure cost. So as part of the business decision, they planned to move to open source technology, which again on the cloud as a service. So once we implemented this solution for them, they managed to save almost 4 to 5 million annually on infrastructure and license costs. Not only that, the cost of the product went down by around 25 to 30%, giving them opportunity to reach out to many new customers in the market. This really helped them leverage cost-effective, high-performance cloud tech for more customers. So this really enabled them to grow from, say, customers which were in the range of 40 or 50 to somewhere from to 150, 200 customers. So outreach was really great when they moved from licensed database to an open source database. So this is the first use case that we implemented. The next one, the cloud solution, where the most important part is the accessibility of the application and the scalability of the application. So one of our customers, the application they built, which enabled them to protect data across any environment, be it on-prem, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, from a single user interface. So a single console helped them to protect the data and make it accessible using a click of a button. And this greatly reduced the cost of IT management by almost 80%. So by adopting the pay-as-you-go model, right, we moved to the cloud. So the infrastructure cost went down. Any new customers who were getting onboarded, they had to pay as the pay for the data they wanted to adopt or protect. So this really brought down their costs by almost 40 to 50%. And being this as a service available on the cloud, so the scale, there was a case where on demand they could scale up or scale down as per the need of the business. So this really helped them reduce the overall cost of resources and optimize their entire product line. So this is the second use case which we have covered. The third one, data insights. And data, as you mentioned, Frank, data is becoming a really important factor for any business, right? The amount of data that are there. But just having the data does not help. So there has to be applications built using which we can get real good insights about the data and which will help them grow the business further. So to cite an example, right, for one of the customers, we built a cloud-based application specifically for connecting workforce digitally. This is an IoT-based solution which provides visual insights of workforce movement across the sites. So the end customers have sites where the workforce come and work and they move around the site. So with the help of the IoT data and the analytics that we do on the IoT data and the visual graphs and details that we provide, they were able to improve the workforce efficiency by almost 25% over a period of 3 to 4 months, and which also helped them reduce the schedule and budget overruns by 20-25%. Apart from this, one problem they had was that compliance. Most of the work done was all manual. So they had to move it completely. They moved the complete onboarding to digital, which also brought in 100% compliance to the regulatory and safety rules, as anyone who is not compliant were flagged and automatically barred from entering the sites. So this really helped them bring in efficiency, safety to the workforce that was there on the site. And the last one, where again I want to cover the efficiency bit, right? So Xoriant has its own generative AI platform, Orion. So we built an application on this platform. The application, the primary use case for the application was it reduces efforts in real-time illegal contact identification. So it used generative AI for predicting or identifying the illegal contact and then immediately flagging that off. So the work that earlier used to take 4 to 5 hours, where the people had to go through videos frame by frame, understand whether if there is an illegal contact or not, it took them less than 30 minutes to identify it. Not only that, so there were the application also enabled them to automatically classify the various types of illegal contacts and provide insights into areas to focus on future trainings, right? It helped them provide insights for future trainings. These are the few use cases I thought of covering, giving examples on what value app modernization have brought to our customers.
Thanks. So this is a very, very important slide from Xoriant's point of view. So if you look at it, anything that you want to do in terms of app modernization, adoption of the cloud, adoption of AI, you need to know some accelerators. You need, like Frank in this slide 4, brought about a lot of things around the user productivity, about security, about cost control. So these are very good items or topics to be discussed. But then how do you do it in the real life? For example, when somebody says security, it talks of encryption, it talks of code quality, it talks of multi-factor, it talks of PaaS elements being brought into security, firewall services. How do you move from an on-prem security to a cloud security? And what are those adoption techniques? And how do you do all that stuff? So this is where Xoriant comes up with quite a bit of accelerators that have been developed, maintained, and enhanced from time to time. So these ones you see on the left-hand side are the technology ones, like the Accelerate IoT is an acceleration platform which enables you to adopt the transformation into the IoT space. So it takes the data from the IoT devices, puts it on the cloud, analyzes it, curates it, comes back, all that. But the key thing over there also, it does a good level of understanding of how edge computing works in the IoT space. So if you have to containerize something and put it on the edge, this is a platform that also works around that. Similarly, we have other platforms like Cloud.io, IOflow, iBase, which is basically a bot-assisted code health checker. So, similarly, with Smart Capture, where you can capture anything and be able to represent it in the way you want in the digital format. So these are some of the technology-related tools and platforms that Xoriant has got. While what it delivers to the business is also where today we have been able to do payment transfers, cash transfers, interface between different systems in a bank, and thereby this becomes like a glue of transferring data from one system to another system. And these are things in play, like the integrated Xoriant framework has been used for trade finance and lending. Similarly, we have the invoice generation using Accelerate. We have KYC digitization. So these are some of the business benefits that have been also provided as part of our acceleration techniques. Next slide.
Yeah, I think just to comment, Srikara, this is a great example, a couple of things, a great example of how accelerators are being used now to reduce risk, to really move the business forward with more certainty, more predictability, and also, of course, to reduce the amount of time it takes to get to those outcomes. And Amit, to your earlier slide, while these are individual cases, the complexity here is reflected in the fact that every business has to do almost all of these things in concert or in orchestration as they go through the transformation process. So they're focused on leveraging cloud solutions, building greater efficiency. Cloud economics has become so critical today that it really is a massive orchestration undertaking. So I think those were great examples.
Absolutely.
We want to move into, go ahead, Srikara.
Discussion. I think you brought about this whole point around cloud economics. In today's world, you will find a bunch of tools that give you all the data available, but who is the one who will analyze the data, validate the data, and be able to make the businesses adopt different outcomes? We have seen that when we talk to our customers, the biggest problem that we have seen is they have all the tools in place. They've run those scans, they've got the information, but they're not able to push the business because there is no business case generation. So what Xoriant has done in this case is Xoriant has worked with clients to start with validating the scopes. So we have seen that sometimes a scope reduction of almost 50% is possible, where you don't need to have those 50% of the application sitting on the cloud, for example. But the remaining 50 have to be really modernized, and you can't use cloud as infrastructure as service. Similarly, we have seen the license choices made by people are wrong. And these are back-end changes that don't impact anybody in the front end, but they reduce the cost significantly. And last but not the least, on the cost control, is also around domain driven and line of business architectures. And Xoriant has helped customers to implement line of business architectures that have significantly again saved the cost. So I think that's a great point that you brought out, that cost economics is one of the key elements to ensure that more adoption into the cloud happens.
Thank you. It's a major change from where we were just a few years ago, where wholesale moves to the cloud were intended to produce reductions in costs that never manifest. And now in maturity, businesses have really been much more deliberate, much more strategic in what goes to the cloud and what doesn't. And I think you pointed that out. So it's a key point to consider to determine which modernization motion is most appropriate. We can go to the next slide. So we're going to look at examples now within the context of industry. And nowhere, I think, is this more exemplified or magnified than in banking and financial services. The disruption that's taking place in this sector is unprecedented. We are seeing businesses become much more distributed within financial services, but the needs are still the same. So we talked earlier about some of the drivers, and those drivers are consistent. There are different approaches and different outcomes within industries. But this need to be able to leverage certain capabilities that are only available in the cloud is a critical motivator for moving with purpose. The explosion of data. Businesses, I think as Srikara pointed out, businesses have the data. They're unsure as to which data is needed, where it should reside, how it should be curated. And then, of course, doing all that with an eye on compliance and data sovereignty. And then lastly, how do we move into a digital age where our business model is being completely disrupted, or we intend to disrupt it? We have cloud native platforms coming in that they are virtually transforming the way business is conducted in banking. We're seeing more embedded finance, more use of APIs, more ecosystem-led opportunities where it is a distributed partnership that collectively provides the total business solution to the end customer. So these kinds of transformations are happening across industries, but very notably in financial services, because that's integrally compartmentalized within every other industry out there. Next slide, please. So I had mentioned earlier this need to take advantage of innovation accelerators. In our research, we continuously go out to buyers asking, what impact are these innovation accelerators like machine learning and AI, Internet of Things, augmented reality? What impact are they having on your decision to pay more for a business application? And we see here most businesses are willing to pay more, and in many cases now, as we see a maturity increasing, they're expecting these capabilities to be embedded in the applications that they purchase. The key here is understanding which functions, which services can benefit most by embedding these innovation accelerators into the capabilities. This becomes a key driver and also a key criterion for which services need to be modernized in order to take advantage of these accelerators. Next slide, please.
Frank, maybe I will interject for a second here.
Please.
So the first 3 points over there, right? AI, machine learning. Gargi, if you can go back to the previous slide. So AI and machine learning, Internet of Things, cloud native architecture. If we just keep the 3 top ones, and if you look at what the innovation is happening and where Xoriant is involved, Xoriant has been partnering with companies like Intel, for example, working on their AI ML platforms in terms of the hardware part, the software part, all the softwares that they bring in terms of like things like OpenVivo and Vino and things like that. And this is where the difference happens. So you are starting at the base level of transformation, which is at the core CPU level. And once you take the Xeon CPU, start working on them and make the change, it then percolates higher up into the application layer and into the business layer. And you start seeing cloud native architectures, remote deployments, and using the existing facility of the CPU processors into your AI and machine learning activities, as well as you getting into cloud native architecture. So this actually helps the world because first, it reduces the amount of people that are required. Two, it enables people to remotely manage very complex things. And three, it also helps in cost savings. So these, I think, is some of the things that Xoriant does, where it partners because we are a product engineering leader as well. It partners with the key vendors, works at the base level, and then comes out with architectures that can be deployed anywhere. Thank you.
It's a great point, Srikara. Thank you. So let's talk a bit more, since I had referenced the fact that we are looking at platforms, and as businesses determine their modernization strategy, many of those services now, the componentized elements of what was a monolithic application must be orchestrated. They have to interconnect. We're seeing these interconnections expand exponentially. Talk a bit about Xoriant's integration framework here.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. So I would like to talk a little bit about our Xoriant's integration framework. So this framework is a pre-built components. It is a framework of pre-built components which connects to multiple systems like ERP in a modular fashion and converts the source data to destination compliant format. For example, payment instructions to banks, financial institutions, whatever comes in, they are converted into their compliant format. So the key features that are there, we'll touch upon this. So if you see on the left-hand side, right, the various sources that it supports, it supports various data formats, file formats, and on the target side, it supports various databases, SaaS applications, APIs, files. And if you see the central part, which is the actual integration framework, it primarily works on getting the data from the source applications, mapping it to the destination formats and transforming it into the format required by the destination. If you take banks, for example, there are a lot of compliance that has to be taken care of. And then orchestrates the complete flow of data from the source to the target machines. And apart from this, it also has a lot of real-time dashboards where real-time, it reduces time and cost for reconciliations. So which can be completely customized with very less effort. So this application is built on a low-code, no-code framework that we have. And key benefits that we get out of this framework is we can onboard customers within a span of less than 2 days. We have onboarded customers already on this. The agile adaptation of changing data sources for rapid ROI. So as the data changes, the sources changes, the application is able to adapt to the changes because it has compatibility with many different connectors available in the system. The third very important part, right? The data quality and accuracy, validation and reconciliation, right, of these data, which is a very important aspect because you're dealing with data of banks. So we need to have a very reliable and accurate reconciliation process. So that is where it does that for banks and various other institutions. And in terms of security, right, it provides various security aspects, like it supports OAuth 2, it supports encryption of and decryption of data both at rest and when in transit. So it provides a very well-defined exceptional handling mechanism so that any data is not lost when it is being moved from the source to the target machines. So this has been used by various of our customers, and now we are expanding to make it very generic, where this framework can be used not just by banking financial institutions, but any customers in any domain, because it is a very generic framework built on a low code, no code app framework that we have.
Thank you, Amit. Next slide, Gargi.
Yeah, so this is an example of the work that we did for one of our clients, and it keeps evolving. Even today, it is evolving because we just had an acquisition by the client. And the first and foremost thing we did was in terms of lift and shift. So that started as the main thing. But within the lift and shift, the refactoring process came in. So that's as new as I talk right now. But prior to that, we have done movement of on-prem applications onto the cloud. And during that whole process, we have taken a lot of on-prem software, which could be like the SOAP software, the WebSphere software, the Oracles, and all those which reside on-prem and they're quite heavy. And then moved the whole thing as part of our transformation, where we ingested the entire data into a PCF, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. We also leveraged applications like Spring Boot and implemented a microservices architecture. We also got to do a CI/CD pipeline, leveraging both the Bamboo and the Git platforms in place. We implemented services for messaging, big data, mobile, and then put the whole operational framework in place where we would monitor, we'd backup, we'd take a business continuity, as well as also code quality by one of our accelerators. And this is called iBase. And using the iBase as the cloud as the accelerator, we also ensured that the cloud quality is good, and thereby there's no tech debt that resides when they move to the cloud. So some of these problems that you know in the industry, like tech debt, is a huge problem because developers start to put anything on the cloud, and at many a point it is not controlled. So we have accelerators that control that. And on the other side, if you see, we have migrated to Google, we have migrated to Azure, we also now migrated to Amazon. So we are sensitive about the requirements of the business, the requirements of the technology, and the right adoption of the cloud. We also have accelerators built in place where when people have chosen a particular cloud provider, we also have the ability to switch between clouds based on the timing, the cost, and things like that. So these are some of the examples where Xoriant can come in. Look at your on-prem infrastructure, look at various technologies, what needs to go where. For example, COBOL needs to go to .NET, SOAP needs to go to REST APIs and things like that. And then build an architecture for you, which has all the infrastructure components of landing zone. It has the components of monitoring. It has a component of SSO and Active Directory. It has a point around networking. How do you do cloud networking versus on-prem networking? Once we do that, we get into the application assessment, look at the changes that need to be brought in, leverage the right tools that are available in the market, and some of them you are seeing on the screen, and then push them to the right cloud in a microservices model, where in fact, I would love to call it domain architecture these days, more than microservices, because domain architectures and industry cloud is actually the way that we are architecting. So even though it is microservices, I will prefer to call it domain architecture. So this is an example of what we did for a mortgage company based out in the US.
Yeah, I think this is a great example. So let's shift now to an area that I spend most of my time engaged with, and that's ISVs that have made the journey to SaaS. And we're continuing to see this process, but it goes beyond just lift and shift. Some of the same issues, challenges we talked about within the enterprise pertain to the ISV that's looking to make this change. Modernizing applications is, again, a complex undertaking, and one of the major inhibitors to ISVs modernizing their application portfolio is a lack of the technical skills to be able to do that, concerns over security, really seeking out help to be able to do this in an efficient and effective way. We know that most ISVs that undertake this journey take between 1 and 3 years to accomplish it. During that time, ISVs are faced with a scenario of accelerating costs and declining licensing revenue while they're waiting for recurring revenue to grow and for costs to come down. But we're seeing more ISVs and SaaS businesses move toward cloud-native architectures to accommodate what we just talked about, enterprise customers being far more distributed, and the implications that has on ISV application architecture. We know from our research that roughly 50%, half of the ISVs that we survey, tell us that edge infrastructure, the proliferation of edge architecture, will have a significant impact on application architecture. One of the major differences moving from independent software vendor and licensing business models to SaaS is that these providers are in the data business now and need to understand and need to be able to accommodate where customers are deploying the workloads associated with those applications and the data that's being generated and processed by those applications. So for the ISV making the transition, we see some shifts in the type of partners that ISVs are looking for in order to be able to do this faster and more efficiently. For the SaaS business today, efficient growth is the key tenet. It's not just growth at all costs. These companies need to show that they're growing profitably, that they are aligning their cost of goods, which in most cases are sales and marketing and cloud infrastructure costs, with the rate of growth, and focusing more on customer lifetime value. So the partners that these companies engage with on the production side become more critical to the ISV's success. Next slide, please.
Frank, I have some input, which is probably Xoriant's point of view again on the SaaS. So one of the determinations during the architecture is when you decide to move to the cloud, and if you have a custom built application, but on the cloud, there is an ability for you to adopt SaaS and just go onto the SaaS platform, that should be the first and foremost priority. And Xoriant can help you in this journey. The second one is, if your partner has a SaaS platform, like Xoriant today has Zorpay, it has CDI, it has SnappyFlow, it has got Cloud.io, multiple of these things which are SaaS-based kind of applications. You could adopt those applications and get there. That's the second option that you should look for, because SaaS is the direction that many organizations like education is headed and those kind of things. The other part, which I think, Frank, you spoke about it, was the edge part of it. And I think we have numerous examples where edge is becoming a priority. Edge is becoming a priority because you need the compute, you need the data, where the data is, where the business is, and you need it at low latency and things like that. A simple example is a crisis management framework, where you have a tornado or you have some kind of a fire that is happening somewhere, and you need to communicate to 100,000 people, and that communication has to happen from a local area. How do you do it actually? So this is where edge computing plays a role. And we have seen that more and more containerization at the edge is happening. The compute sits there, or the intelligence sits there, or the application sits there. And thereby at the edge is where all the processing happens. Similar cases are in the health industry, where, for example, in the US, we are probably blessed to have more doctors per people, but somewhere in Africa, somewhere else, you may not have that luxury. You'll have more people for less doctors. And the only way to do it is through the adoption of equipment that has built-in AI at the edge. And that's some of the examples that I would say where Xoriant can help you either build the product or migrate the product over there. Thanks.
Great points, Srikara. I wanted to take some time just to put this in perspective. So this example comes from IDC's Worldwide Software as a Service and Public Cloud Software Forecast, projecting out over the next 5 years. And we see that SaaS applications, while growing slower than system infrastructure software and platform as a service, newer segments of cloud, remains the largest segment, representing more than 48%. But we're talking about impressive growth of nearly 16%. You compare that to on-premise software applications, which in 2022 was growing at about a little over 2% and declining. We see why ISVs are accelerating their move to SaaS. All new business application investments now are SaaS applications. and ISVs are responding in kind. So we've seen this progression from traditional lift and shift, moving the application to the cloud, to be able to identify what are the components of that monolithic application that would most benefit from containerization, from microservices and containerization. What new services can we build to extend the value? So again, very closely aligned with what's happening in the enterprise, a much more deliberate and what I would call a mature approach to transformation taking place within the ISV. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. So this is one of those accelerators that I actually love to explain, because this is an example where, if you take it in logical terms, if somebody has a house built in 2004 and somebody looks at a house built in 2023, and you see, how do I get from 2003 house to 2023 house with all the modern stuff? It is where app modernization fits in actually. So that is the flow of app modernization, where you're moving from monolithic structures to either to domain architectures or you're moving into microservices. But that journey takes time. It is not going to happen overnight. You have to plan, you have to schedule, you have to do a lot, cleansing of the data, things like that before you get there. And during this time, what do people do? But I still want to get there. I want to get to the 2023 house, even though I live in a 2003 house, is where Cloud IO comes into picture. Cloud IO platform provides you the ability to implement something where you're using what is existing today, but gives you a fresh face or look. And that's the 2023 face is what I would say. That's the first example of what Cloud IO can do. So anybody and everybody should adopt Cloud IO as one of the things before they get to the app modernization journey. The second one is in terms of workflows. Cloud IO has the ability to create workflows very quickly between various people or resources, I would call, and the equipment at the back or the applications at the back. So you can link all these things into workflows, which is again quite easy to set up. Cloud IO also provides you a dashboarding mechanism. So you will have all the dashboards from multiple sources, and you can customize the dashboard the way you want, and you can use it for your reporting stuff. Today, for our own financial reporting, we have actually moved away long time back from Excel files and got them all onto Cloud IO, so that becomes one of the key things for us in the ease of reporting. We don't store any data on this, so that way your data is all secure. This is just a transition element in between. So we don't store any data. That's a very, very important differentiator, because we don't need to get to any of the data related storage and compliance related. There are some complex applications. For example, Oracle EBS, if you look at the interface complexity, it's quite complex. So now how can Cloud IO remove this complexity and put itself in front of Oracle EBS? That's a fantastic case study, and I would urge each one of us to approach us and actually ask us how we did it, and we'll explain it here. The other factor of this Cloud IO is also that this whole development process is a web-based development process. So you can develop things on the web and the drag and drop process. And last but not the least, it's got a mobile form factor. And this mobile form factor is very helpful, because very few applications, they have mobile apps, they have desktop apps, but there is nothing called mobile form factor related stuff, which is what is in Cloud IO. And one of the other things I would like to sign off on this is the ability to do it in low code and then generate a lot of integrations from this platform to any other platform. So the advantages of Cloud IO is multiple, and I would urge that you should do a proof of concept pilot with us. And we can say that this journey could be anywhere between 2 weeks to 4 months. And that is the timeline we are looking at to implement Cloud IO. We are not looking at years and months to do it, but we are looking at weeks to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Srikara.
Yeah, thanks, Srikara. So I would like to touch upon one of our clients' journey, transformational journey from on-prem customer or went to a SaaS provider, right? So they wanted to become a SaaS provider. So our client, as part of this transformational journey of theirs, our client needed an on-demand reporting ecosystem, which could be available on the cloud, and move away from on-prem based reporting system that they currently had. So Xoriant analyzed their application, the needs that was required for this. So based on that, Xoriant created a reporting infrastructure, which was based on the cloud data lake architecture on AWS. Here we brought in our expertise on cloud IO, which had a feature which IO flow, which was used for data ingestion and transformation, consuming data from different source systems and staging the data in Amazon S3. Then this data was formatted and moved to Redshift, and then the data was visualized using Tableau, which was then used by the client to show various reports that they wanted for various customers of theirs. And we used a host of various AWS services, right from storing the data to managing the data and visualizing the data. So wanted to touch upon a use case where we have used not only AWS as the platform, but also Xoriant's Cloud IO solutions, which was a great fit for this use case. Over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Amit. I think what's really interesting about this is the fact that there are so many services that are offered by cloud service providers. It's very difficult for the enterprise or the ISV to be able to understand exactly what's available to them and how to orchestrate these different services into a comprehensive solution. So I think this is a great example of something that Xoriant brings is, this deep understanding of cloud services and being able to leverage the best service for the outcomes that the business is looking to achieve.
Yeah. So just to add to this, right, we being a technology company, right, so each cloud provider brings their own services, right? So you could have a service which is available in AWS, Azure, GCP, but which one to choose, which is the best suited for a client's use case, right? So that is where we bring value. Like we can have services which are spanning multi-cloud and provide the best service to the client and integrate that. So that is the value that we bring as a technology company.
Yeah, that's very, very clear. Thank you.
All right. I would like to thank all the speakers for taking us through this delightful and insightful discussion. And we would definitely look into heading towards the Q&A section now. So we have been getting quite a few questions. However, in the interest of time, we would like to quickly address a couple of them. So the first question is for Amit. What do you think are the immediate applications of generative AI in app modernization?
Thanks, Gargi. So what we see, like the immediate use of generative AI in app modernization, right, would involve automated code refactoring, enhancing user experience, automated testing, and data migration and transformation. These are the immediate ones that we have started to see from various customers. So we would like to, we are already investing in these areas and would further invest in them as well. Thanks, Gargi.
Thanks a lot, Amit, for that insight. The other question we have is to Srikara. What are the key milestones to look out for in the application modernization journey?
Oh, that's a brilliant question, actually. So I think one and foremost would be to really understand what your landscape looks like. That's a very, very important thing. So this could be in the healthcare sector, it could be in the banking sector. So it is domain dependent. So first you will have to do an application assessment. And this application assessment will reveal to say what applications can go in which buckets. Some of them probably just need decommission. Some of them don't need to be shifted to the cloud. Some of them will need a great amount of transformation that needs to happen. So whether you do a technology transformation or you do a business transformation, that has to be understood. And then comes the next step of actually putting all the people together. So for example, if there's an application which is by Atlassian, and then you have it on the AWS cloud, and then you're trying to migrate a host of dependent applications on that, you need a partner. So you need to put together the group of people. And I believe a partner is absolutely essential apart from the product vendors. So bring them all together and then create a team that can actually execute it. And one of the key aspects that you need to do is to, enable design and planning at a much earlier stage, so that when you do the design and planning, you're already sure that the functionality that it will deliver on the cloud is better than what it is today or same as what is today. Always choose the one when it is better than today. And last but not the least, put enough testing in place so that as you migrate, as you move to the cloud and people start adopting, the performance does not get degraded. And thereby enough amount of testing is absolutely required. And last but not the least, put enough governance on top of it so that during the modernization process, the governance that you adopt on data, on security, on day-to-day services and operations are all taken care of. And if there are any regulatory requirements, you are compliant to those regulatory requirements. These would be kind of a step process for app modernization into the cloud.
Thanks, Srikara. I think those were some really factual points here. I think we have another interesting question that's come up, and I think I'd like Frank to address it. So we have seen instances where companies are moving from microservices to monolithic. Can you please share some light or your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Gargi. It's an interesting phenomenon, if we want to call it that. I look at that much the way I look at repatriation. And businesses that have moved workloads to the cloud and moved services to the cloud, realizing that they were either too costly or that they were experiencing some performance degradation. To the point that Srikara made earlier, you want to go for the option that gives you the best performance. And it's understanding what that option is before you make the move. So in the beginning, there was this urgency to change, to transform, and dealing with the aftermath of that is what we're seeing when we look at repatriation. So there's an awful lot to orchestrating and interconnecting discrete services. So depending upon the interdependencies, depending upon the performance, it may be that discrete services perform better when they become part of a more integrated set of capabilities. So that's really driving this. Again, it's better wherever possible to anticipate the impact on performance of any change, but sometimes that's impossible. Conditions change in the business, conditions change in the market. Now all of a sudden the requirements have shifted, and it's time to take a look at that modernization or that change and determining whether or not you need to revert back. So I still see those being in the minority at this point. They're actually becoming less because of the fact businesses are more deliberate when they undergo something like this, but there will always be the dynamic of having to move to an earlier state or moving to a different state as a result of changes in the market that weren't anticipated. They weren't foreseeable at the time the change was made. So I do believe that the move from discrete services back to a more integrated solution is necessary in some cases. In fact, we are examining what those cases are. We do research in that area. So I will suggest to the audience here, if they're interested in learning more about that, reach out to Xoriant, and we can put together maybe more specific answers to questions.
All right. So thanks everyone for your enthusiastic engagement. And this has truly made the session very, very engaging. So we shall be definitely sharing this recording with you all, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Amit.
Thanks, everyone.